In uptown New Orleans, there's a beautiful area where Carrollton Avenue meets St. Charles. The oak trees, their roots are stretching through the concrete of the sidewalks. You can hear the bells of the streetcar coming down the street track, letting everyone know that they're gliding closer. One of my favorite things about this spot is on the corner of Plum and Carrollton, there's this beautiful, beautiful old church, brick-style church, partially hidden from view from the other side of the street. Right next over is oak, which is my favorite quality is it always smells like fresh coffee. So when you're there, you just get the whiffs of all the coffee shops on the corner. The only thing that would spoil the charm of this old, beautiful corner of New Orleans is the 115-pound junkie homeless man in the corner, wrapped in a cigarette-burned quilt, the skin peeling from his hips for sleeping on the concrete so long, the blanket providing a false sense of security as he withdraws from heroin, hopeless, hurting, and just like the church, I was partially hidden from view. According to the National Alliance for Homeless People, or to End Homelessness, an estimated 500,000 people will spend the night homeless on every given night across the country. So as I lay on the corner that night along with thousands of others across the country, when I woke up that morning, the smell of fresh coffee was a little bit closer than usual. As I opened my eyes, a small white cup steaming with fresh, hot coffee on top of the cleanest $10 bill I had ever seen. It took me a second to figure out what was going on. I wasn't aware. I was in a little bit of a haze. As I woke up that morning, trying to figure out what happened, I was paying attention to the way the cup was neatly stacked on top of the $10 bill, folded, not thrown to the side. Now, I had seen the comings and goings of this stranger that had given me this coffee and cash quite a bit at this point. It'd been a while now. And I can't speak for her, but I can zoom into the act a little bit closer, right? So I can tell you about her intention. I can tell you that I knew that when she left her cleaning job at the bank at night, she walked the opposite direction. I knew that when she left, she went away from where I was. I knew that in order for her to get that close to me, to fold the $10 bill, to put the cup of coffee on top, she chose to make an extra effort. There was intention involved in her act. But what I'd like to do is, I would like to distinguish these acts between others, right? Because what's the difference is, as myself, I was aware of the act. I was aware of her intention, and that had a great significance on me. So let's fast forward to what seemed like the next night was, but most likely a week later. I had a long journey back to the spot where I was going to sleep that night. I had laid up against the masonry of that old church. I could still feel the warmth from the sun radiating through the concrete. And I remember I could have only fallen asleep for a couple of hours. And as the bars closed, here comes Chris. Right. He walks up to me, he stands about 6 or 7 feet away, and he says, "Hey man, I won't give you any money, but I'll buy you a bus ticket wherever you want to go." And I must have looked shocked by the statement because I didn't even get to reply to the guy. And he immediately said, "Well, look, man, I'll be back in the morning." He takes this giant 5-gallon jug of water and just puts it right next to me and leaves. Now, having spent some time out there, one of the things that you realize is people make promises. They say they're going to return. They say they're going to bring you something or they're going to come to help, and they never do. 9 times out of 10, they never return, and you never see that person again. So for myself, it was easier to resign the thought. It was easier to say, well, that was a crazy encounter and move on, right? Because rather than be disappointed, rather than have that hope, what little is left smashed again.
But just as suddenly as I had resigned the thought, here comes Chris with a white Honda Civic curbside to Carrollton, waving a megabus ticket out the window.
Right. Now, these are 2 moments in my life that would change my life forever, but I want to zoom in on what Chris has done, right? Because Chris has experience with some of the pitfalls of addiction. Now, whether that's through his own experience or through encounters with others, he was aware that there are things that addicts have tendencies to do and that alcoholics have tendencies to do. But so, nonetheless, he still showed a willingness to help, right? Hence the bus ticket instead of cash, right? Hence the effort instead of none at all. So, when I look at this, and I'm trying to think about the intention behind Chris's act. And again, it's hard for me because when I put it in words, I can't speak for Chris. All I can do is give you my side of the story. But I can tell you about this impact that it's had on me, right? Because what's happened now is I'm not hopeless anymore. I'm not alone because there's just a sliver of a chance that I might be worth something more than that, right? So what these two actions have done is empathy has connected us, right? With Chris and the stranger's actions, they have opened the lock of sorrow and hopelessness with the key of unprejudiced and unbiased humanity. The idea that we're all human and we all have these same struggles. They just look a little different from person to person. One of the things that I noticed the most was the way that Chris had spoke to me. He was very matter of fact, very blunt, very straightforward with what he had said. And the disbelief came from, because I had been called on my bluff. You know, I had elaborated this con of, I'm going to be a traveling teacher that's trying to get to Nashville, so you should help me out with some cash, right? That was my elaborate con for this guy. Because why wouldn't you believe an emaciated, heavily tattooed caveman with dirty flip-flops and a backpack? I'm obviously a credible source of information. Okay? So if you've stuck it out with me this far and you're paying attention, hopefully I've shown you that our actions have an effect. And if I can connect these things for you, I'd like to say, when we look at empathy, we usually only see the effects of our immediate surroundings. We can see how we help our family. We can see how it helps our friends. But we often don't see how far-reaching our empathetic actions are. So I'd like to leave you with this. One day, my wife and I are driving around running some errands in her car in the afternoon. And we stop at a particularly popular panhandling spot in town. You know, the gentleman approaches the vehicle. My wife gives him a little bit of cash. And then I noticed when she opens the center console, she's got this haphazard wad of $1 bills and coins, like a monkey fist sitting in the center console. And we started to have a discussion. We drive off and we started to have a discussion about the common pitfalls of addiction, the misconceptions of giving homeless people money. And before I could drag the conversation out any further, my wife very simply and very matter-of-factly said, "You never know, that might be someone's Samuel." Thank you.